Good evening, everybody. I am very happy to be here today to start the 7th Annual Science Research Symposium 2016. I'd like to ask everybody to turn off their cell phone and put it away. Thank you. And I would like to start by inviting Dr. Beck, the Dean, Graduate School of Kean University, to say a few words for us.
Exercise science. We're excited to see your symposium. You have a great venue for it. 7th annual, I was just talking with Tim Marshall in the back, and he said he'd been at every one. And I bet Dr. Ansel has been at every one. And Josh, have you been at every one too?
Yes.
All right, so we've got some real veterans here. This is the first time the thing has been recorded. So you are all going to be recorded for posterity. Your grandchildren may be watching it on YouTube and laughing at you 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, or whatever that will be. But seriously, it's great that you're here. We're excited about your research. We're thrilled that you're presenting that research for the community at Kean. I'd love to see the smiles on a thesis student's face when they know they've finished that thesis successfully. And Dr. Ansel told me that almost all the students who are presenting today have completed their projects. I know some of you already have terrific jobs and are moving out into the workplace. Some of you are looking forward to future advances in the program and the same thing that the thesis students have accomplished today. So again, let me tell you, congratulations. I look forward to shaking your hands at graduation, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beck. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only one, Dr. Walter Ansel.
Okay, we'd like to thank Dr. Beck, Dean of the Graduate, actually Nathan Weiss Graduate College, for accepting our invitation to our program this year. We really appreciated the support that the graduate school has given us in the past. And we welcome everybody from the fitness program, the Global Fitness and Wellness program, and also the Masters in Exercise Science program. We would like to start the program off with answering some of the questions that some students have asked us in the past about who we are in reference to the Master's program in Exercise Science. And even in the undergraduate program, Global Fitness and Wellness, people have always asked us, what can I do with this BS or this master's program? What kind of jobs can I get? So what I'm going to do tonight is to tell you about what happens in our master's program and what type of student we have in the program. Okay? First of all, I want to congratulate, excuse me, what did I hit here? Help me out. Okay, thanks.
You can move these on.
That's what I'm doing, yeah. Okay, Tim Marshall, Dr. Marshall, is in the back. Some of you have him, most of you have had him as a professor in the master's program, and some of you may have had him in the master's program. So we want to congratulate him. He is a 2012 graduate of our program, just received his PhD from Seton Hall. Is Catherine here tonight? Nadelberg? Not yet. Okay, not yet. She was a 2014 graduate of our program, and she was accepted last year into the DPT program at Rutgers University and finishing her first year there. Dr. Kim Spaccaratella, is Dr. Spaccaratella here? Okay, she's in the back. She is a graduate of our master's program, and she is a graduate of Penn State University with a PhD in nutrition. And then Liz, who's over here, who just finished last year the master's program in exercise science, just presented at the Greater New York City ACSM on last Saturday, actually, at Queens College, okay? So they've done an excellent job. 3 of our students also have applied to the DPT program at Kean, and they're waiting to hear about their status. We have actually 6 to 7 students who are graduates of our master's program who are seeking doctoral programs in various universities. We have 5 or 6 of our global fitness and wellness students who have applied to the exercise program, which represents about 20% of our graduating class, which is one of the largest years for our undergraduate programs to seek. Okay. We do have diversity in our student population. We have some students from Portugal. We have students that are African American, Caucasian. We have several students from the Middle Eastern countries. We have students from South America, Central America, Asian Americans, and Russian Americans in our program. 30% of our program is diverse, okay? We have about 60% women, females, 40% males. Age range is 22 to 50 years of age, okay? And the mean age is about 26. So, this is our 50th thesis completed this year. 90% of them have been published in ProQuest. 99% of our students are graduating with a master's in exercise science have jobs. They're actually working. Most of them which are in the field. In fact, some of them are adjunct professors here at Kean in our undergraduate program, Global Fitness and Wellness. The other thing too is that I have a handout here. There's one in the back, or there's quite a few in the back for you. But it sort of gives you an idea of what kind of jobs are available today, okay? For example, the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York is looking for a performance specialist, okay? Hospital of Special Surgery is the world leader in orthopedics, rheumatology, and rehabilitation. In fact, they've recently been voted the #1 hospital for orthopedics. And so, if you look at what they're looking for, They're looking for students who have a master's in exercise physiology or related exercise science field. They are certified in ACSM, NSCA, and they are CPR certified. We have with the U.S. Army in Pennsylvania, health educator. What are they looking for? A person in exercise science. We have a resort in California that is basically is a, anybody know the name Titleist in golf? Golf balls, Titleist golf balls, Pro 4. We have people that, we have them looking for exercise sciences. We have the Chatham Club in Chatham that's looking for an exercise science. We have Force 10, Athletic Performance Director, exercise science. We have a personal training coach, exercise science. And some of you may not want to go to South Dakota, but we have a job here for a certified strength and conditioning specialist in South Dakota. Okay. There are, to continue on, I'll be with a few more minutes. We have 10 students graduating in May 2016. We have another 10 students that plan to graduate from the program in August of 2016. Besides making their presentations here, their PowerPoints, we have 10 posters accepted for the Kean University Student Research Days on April 27th. We have one oral presentation. We have, coming up this year, we have 11 new students who apply for the IRB by June of 2016. Most of our students are certified ACSM health specialists, NCSF sports nutrition specialists, or CSCS specialists. We have strength coach people in our program from the NSCA, and ACE, personal trainers, group exercise professionals. So if you want to be part of this group of scholars, which they are, and outstanding professionals in the field, contact our department, and we will help you in your academic program pursuits in exercise science. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'll get her. Want to get her? Go ahead.
Before we start, we'd like to ask Dr. Jessica Adams, the Executive Director of the Physical Education, Recreation and Health, to say a few words. Dr. Adams?
It's an honor to be here today. I remember many of you as undergraduate students, and I really enjoy to see how your research progresses. I have to say that when I was sitting, I see a lot of undergraduate students in this room today, and when I was doing my bachelor's, I had no idea or intention that going on to graduate school would be a possibility for me. And something that a lot of my mentors and students that were ahead of me had shown was that this was an option. So for each and every one of you, graduate school is a possibility if that's something that you're looking for. And to see how the students have taken the content that they've learned in the class and applied it to the field that they're passionate about, to collect data and research, to develop programs, which ultimately has served to mold their careers. Many of them had started along this pathway in their career that they're passionate about, and it's wonderful to see. I look forward to seeing the presentations tonight, and I really don't want to take up too much of your time because I know there's several research projects that I'd like to see and be a part of. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker, presenter is Mark Hung, who is a graduate of our program last year. He is a certified strength coach. His specialty is martial arts. He's been teaching some of our courses in the Global Fitness and Wellness program this past year or so. I've known him now for 7 years or more. He has progressed, and I'm trying to convince him to go to Columbia and get his doctorate and keep on growing in the field. So I want to introduce Mark Hung. He's going to talk a little bit more about our program.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know that many of you are very busy college students with very hectic schedules, and I really appreciate the time for you coming out here. I am aware that this is an extra credit project for some of you, but I think you're really going to learn something. We have a great lineup of speakers tonight. And also I want to thank Dr. Enzel, Dr. Palgi, and Dr. Adams for giving me this opportunity to speak. I would have loved to present my research, but I feel that there's something a little more important that I'd like to share with you. So, my name is Mark. I hold many titles: strength coach, entrepreneur, fitness professional. But one that I'm probably most proud of is that I'm a failure. That is the one I'm most proud of. And I've made a great discovery about life. I've discovered that as humans, we are all after, for the most part, the same things. It just comes in different forms. See, we all seek fulfillment, achievement, through one way or another. Many times it's through career success, a nice house, a wonderful spouse, race car, good physique, or a combination of the few. The other thing I've discovered is that there's two ways to get all of these things, or any combination of them. The first one is painful, lonely, and expensive, and that's through failure. That was my chosen method because I don't learn very well. I'm very stubborn. So when I try something that doesn't work, I'll keep trying until I get it. Now, that sounds romantic in hindsight, but really it's expensive and painful. But the other thing that works really well is the wonder of personal development. These two words have consumed my life for the past, I don't know how many years. And personal development is another one of these things that gets you absolutely everything you need. The late Jim Rohn said that goal achievement or success is not an achievement process. It's not about achieving something, getting that piece of paper, getting that money, getting that spouse, getting that house. It's not about that. It's about becoming. It's about growing yourself, becoming something better. See, ladies and gentlemen, you don't set a goal to teach a class. You set a goal to become a great teacher. You don't set a goal to train a certain client. You set a goal to become a celebrity trainer. You don't set a goal to make $1 million. You set a goal to become a millionaire. Now, as far as failure and personal development is concerned, I think personal development is a lot better. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's less painful, it's better. It's just downright better. And I'm fully convinced that there's many different ways of personal development. One of them is going to be higher education. Higher education is probably the best way to go about it. If you look at all the top professionals in any field, many of them have advanced degrees. Even in entrepreneurship, where they claim that Bill Gates dropped out of college, there's only one or two of those. But for the remainder that you don't see, they all have advanced degrees. And I'm fully convinced that this degree, in my experience, now Doc gave you the social proof, and I'm an example of the social proof, but I believe and I'm fully convinced that this degree is the best degree available at Kean University and the most powerful and the most dangerous, one of the most powerful degrees on the planet because of its great versatility and its supreme quality. So, we have a rogues gallery here, and for those of you that don't know what a rogues gallery is, you know how like Batman has a bunch of villains, right? This is our rogues gallery right here. We got the best of the best, okay? As far as our program is concerned, Dr. Ansel is the main person you want to go to, and that number there is his office number. That number is available for you, or also his email. This presentation is mainly for the undergrads that are looking into this, and I would convince you that this is really worth it. So, but before I talk more about the program, I'd like to speak a little bit about our industry. Currently in the United States, more than 34,000 health clubs. There's 54 million health club members in the United States, and this is a $24 billion industry. 24 billion bones. That's a lot of money, okay? And these figures are all for, and as far as global is concerned, 84 billion. So these numbers are from 2014, which means that they've only increased now and they will continue to increase. Because as Americans, or as human beings, naturally we're lazy. That's why we have inventions to make everything easier. Naturally we're lazy, so as human beings get lazier and lazier with the great inventions of life, we need more of you. Here's the thing, has anyone ever heard of the 80-20 rule? 80-20 rule, for those of you that don't know, 80-20 rule is basically that 20% of your effort is responsible for 80% of your results. And as far as the top earners in every industry goes, that same rule applies. Now, in the great American free market that we're all blessed to be a part of, 20% of the top people will make 80% of the money. And 20% of the top 20% will make 80% of that 80%, and it keeps climbing, climbing, climbing. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at that $24.2 billion number. I want you to look at that huge number and say to yourself, if you had 0.0001% of that, 0.001%, how much would that be? The answer is $2.4 million. You could, has anyone ever seen those gold toilets in Dubai? Right, your kitchen table will be an iPad. You'll order Pizza Hut straight from your kitchen table, okay? That's massive amounts of money, and all you need to do is just grow to be the top 20% and the top of that 20%. And we've already discussed this. What's the way to get there? Two wonderful words, personal development. And as far as the United States is concerned, we're proportionally, we're much bigger compared to the rest of the world. 24 to 84 is a very big difference. So, some of you might be saying, well, life is not about money. And I agree with you, it's not. Money's not important. Unless, if, like me, you were homeless at one point and living on saltine crackers and peanut butter, climbing through the window to avoid your landlord, then you'll say to yourself, you'll never be broke again. But let's say that you're not the entrepreneurial type, that's fine. There's many great careers that can keep you fulfilled in our great industry of fitness. Personal trainer, group fitness instructor, fitness manager, etc., all the way down. I've tried many combinations of these and I've had a great time in all of them. There's not a single one that I wouldn't do again. Personally, I just like to help a broader group of people, which is why I became an entrepreneur. Okay. So with that in mind, if your heart rate didn't increase, then we got to talk a little more after I'm gone. More about the program. Okay. Doc already shared a little bit with you. We have a whole rogues gallery here. We have a great deal of effective people that have graduated from our program. It's going to prepare you to work in fitness centers, corporate wellness, or like me, start your own business. Okay, I started 8. I failed most of them. I've been nearly bankrupt about 4 or 5 times. That's fine. I'm still here. Okay, still here, and everything's better now. Our program offers 2 concentrations, exercise physiology and athletic training. How many of you in athletic training? Show of hands. Sorry. For those of you that are, for those of you that are in it, great. For those of you that are considering it, we do offer that option as well, if dealing with injury prevention is a career path that you'd like to take. Our admission requirements, listen, here's the thing. If I can get into this program, I'm confident that everyone in this room can. I was a very different student with undergrad. I was absolutely a nightmare for Dr. Adams, Dr. Ansel, and Dr. Powell. I was absolutely a nightmare for them. But I was still able to, listen, with that GRE, all you need to do is just buy one of those large books or take a class, study that thing, do the absolute best you can, and apply. You never know. You never know. For me, I was like the luck of the draw, and it certainly changed my life. We need a GPA of 3.0, official transcripts, 2 letters of recommendation, personal statement, make it real good. Resume, if your resume is not good already, go and take it to a professional and get it catered. Your resume should always be evolving. Okay? And if you're an international student, the TOEFL is required. Our coursework, now this shouldn't really be a chore to you, because I remember 3510. And that was an awesome class. I absolutely had a blast in that class. And I remember even in my specific section, I still remember that there's people in my section who became successful today. I remember actually some of them are my competitors, some of the people that were in that 3510 section with me. So if you think that this is a chore, I can assure you it's definitely not. I haven't taken a 2250 because I'm not an athletic trainer, but I can certainly say that 3510 is an awesome class. And as I mentioned before, you do need a GPA of 3.0 or higher. Our program consists of 33 credits, a research component, comprehensive exam, and a thesis. And the thesis is what you're going to be listening to a lot of our bright minds present tonight. And again, that's also not a thesis. See, my first thesis when I had presented to Doc was, all right, I had the mindset that I was going to do the absolute minimum possible to get it done, get out, because I was sick of being in school. And Doc convinced me, no, don't do that. Do something you're passionate about. My thesis was about physiological profile of mixed martial artists. And basically what I can tell you from my research is that in technicality, everyone here could be an MMA fighter. So I thought that was really interesting. You get the chance to use groundbreaking research. See, anyone ever see those CNN articles or Huffington Post articles? New research shows blah, 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 blah. Research out of Montreal says, or research out of California says, you're the frontier of the new information. Okay? It's strange because technology evolves and society evolves, but the human body has been pretty stubborn for a long time, yet we keep discovering new things about it. You'll have the opportunity to be one of those frontline people to discover something completely new. And this is one of the only programs that allows you to do that. These are our core courses that you'll be taking in the program. These are kind of like, how do I say? I don't want to call them basic requirements because they're not. They're all great courses. One of my absolute favorite ones was 5103. I remember that was the class that I had tried paleo for the first time. And that was a very interesting semester. That was my first semester in graduate school. With your concentration, you're going to take 3 courses, either in exercise physiology or exercise training. Depending on whether or not you choose to go exercise phys or athletic training, you'll pick one of those. And then, of course, the fun part is where you actually get to get out there and do your research. You get to go out there and change lives. You get to go out there and advance the human race. So here's what I want you to kind of visualize this. One time I asked one of my mentors, and this will be my last slide here, but I want to leave you with a message that you'll take home. And if you decide never to apply to this program, that's completely fine, each to his own. Although I certainly encourage you to, but let me tell you a little story. I had a mentor once, and I asked him, I said, what's the one thing? What's the one thing that gets me from where I am to get you to where you are? What's that one thing that makes me you? And he looks at me and he says, action. You have to continue to take action. I was like, but I am taking action. I mean, do you see I'm very organized? Look at all my paperwork. And this was a time in my life when it was a tough time. And he says, no, continually take action. And I want you to imagine this, visualize this metaphor right now, okay? And the best way I can describe success is kind of like you being at an archery range. So I want you to visualize you're in an archery range right now. There's three things. There's the bow, the arrow, and the target. With many there's the lines that eventually end up to the bullseye. Now what most of society will do, and what maybe you might have been doing up until this day in your life, is that you have picked up the bow, you have picked up the arrow, you have notched the arrow in the string, you have pulled the string back, and you aim. You're looking at the target, you're aiming. And you aim. And you aim. And you aim. And for a long time, I was aiming for 26 years. I was just aiming and aiming and aiming. See, I had all the goals set. I had all the big goals. I had my 1-year goal, 3-year goal, 5-year goal, 10-year goal, 20-year goal. I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I kept aiming. Aim, aim, aim. And you got to change your philosophy. You got to change your philosophy from ready, aim, fire to ready, fire, aim. You pick up that bow, you pick up that arrow, you notch it in, you pull it back to the target, you let it fly. Guess what? It lands 3 inches to the left. Okay, pick up another arrow, aim again, shoot. Okay, lands 1 inch to the right, pick it up, aim, bullseye. You've got to change your philosophy from ready, aim, fire to ready, fire, aim. You've got to stop thinking about whether or not you're going to get higher education, and you've got to get out on this website. You got to that's the application deadline. That June 1st is irrelevant. Your deadline was yesterday. You've got to take action. You've got to ready, fire, aim. I'm here to tell you that I don't want to say that, well, I'm a success because of the program, but I will say it. I will say it. That prior to, from the time that I graduated with a bachelor's and I didn't take responsibility, I blamed the job market. I blamed somebody else. I blame that time as when I ballooned to 300 pounds. I was working minimum wage in a sandwich shop. I blamed somebody else. Then one day I finally decided to take action. I saw Doc on campus because I was here for something else. He said, why don't you apply? I took a chance. I took my GREs. I took a chance. I barely got in. By the skin of my nose, I barely got in. And from there, I had built businesses. I'd failed them. I'd gone bankrupt. I'd tried again. And it has blessed me with a life that prior to that time I would have never thought. I've had the fortunate ability to work with professional fighters, to go to Atlantic City once every month, maybe twice a month, to corner fighters, to work with their weight cut, to live on the Upper East Side of New York, which is a very expensive area. I've been blessed with these, and it's not because of my failures. My failures got me to where I was beforehand, but it was my personal development and my willingness to take action that brought me to that point. And I'm telling you that you can't afford not to apply. You have to. I'm telling you. Other people are giving you an option. I'm saying it's an absolute must for you. Thank you. God bless.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark. It was a great presentation, and I hope the website is booming right now. The fact I saw some people run out of here, and some people open up their notebooks and they're jumping right on it. Want to have our first speaker come up today, Eric, and make his presentation. Is Eric there? Yep. You just give an introduction about yourself. Okay.
I'm sorry?
Just give an introduction about yourself. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric Dangalegi. I'm presenting the effects of different dosages of citrulline malate on 60-yard shuttle run times and DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness. I just graduated from the program this past January. My background is I have a bachelor's in biology and chemistry from Ramapo College of New Jersey. And professionally, I work with medical devices, so I kind of work on the back end of sports-related injuries or sports-related ailments. The topic, like I said, the topic today I'm discussing is citrulline malate in particular. This particular topic interested me the most because for decades, researchers have been going through a multitude of supplements to try and decipher which ones exactly will benefit, the general population or athletes or whichever population they're trying to study for the better. Whether it be, the things like creatine, glutamine, amino acid, like you name it, there's thousands of them, and there's thousands of research articles out there going over the effects of them as well. The particular one I wanted to focus on was citrulline malate. Has anybody ever heard of citrulline malate? Show of it. Okay, I see a couple nods. I'm not really surprised because it is a up-and-coming supplement in the nutritional world, and previously in research it's been used in semi-professional cyclists and weightlifters, and it was also worked on patients with asthenia or weakness in their hands and their digits, and it showed significant positive results. So it was a supplement that I really wanted to delve into to distinguish whether or not it would provide beneficial results for the 60-yard shuttle run, because that particular protocol had not been deliberated over yet. So a little bit of background about the actual supplement itself. Citrulline malate is a combination of the two non-essential amino acids, L-citrulline, which naturally you can find it in watermelon and apples, and the acid salt malate, also known as malic acid, which you can find naturally in squash, cherries, and rhubarb. L-citrulline is a component of the urogenesis cycle, so it enables the acceleration of this cycle and facilitates ammonium and lactate clearance. Malate is a TCA cycle intermediate, and it has been suggested by Bendahan in 2002. It has been suggested to enhance energy production. More specifically, it acts as a shuttle between the cytoplasm and mitochondria of the cell, going past the oxidative pathways to induce ammonia and limit it by manipulating it towards pyruvate genesis and nucleoglucogenesis. So with this, there's a few hypotheses that I wanted to go over in regards to the study. The first one is the first hypothesis was that citrulline malate will enhance the anaerobic capacity of the participants because, as I mentioned before in the introduction, it facilitates ammonium and lactic acid clearance. So therefore, I figured it would enhance the anaerobic capacity of the participants. The next hypothesis was I wanted to see if the greater the dosage, the less time it would take the participant to complete the protocol. Because keep in mind, during research, the dosages that were utilized were 6 grams and 8 grams. In my particular study, we wanted to evaluate the entire spectrum of dosages, so we used 2, 4, 6, 8, and all the way up to 10 grams, and with also a placebo was involved as well to see if there was a placebo effect involved as well. The next hypothesis was that citrulline malate would aid in the recovery of the participants, because again, with the ammonium clearance and the lactate clearance, there's less of a chance for delayed onset muscle soreness, so it would be better for their recovery. The next one is citrulline malate will alleviate the symptoms associated with DOM, so similar to that of aiding in the recovery of the participants. And the last one, the higher dosages of DOM, the higher the dosages of citrulline malate, the lower the severity of delayed onset muscle soreness. Now in order to do this, the way that we designed the study and the protocol was that it was a double-blind crossover design. So myself nor the participants knew of the dosages that they were taking, and over the course of the study, which took a total of 7 weeks, each individual participant took each individual treatment, so they experienced all of them. The first protocol was to take height and weight measurements, that standard protocol, along with body mass index, and then After that, there was 6 weeks of testing dates. So what would happen is the participants were given the different dosages. It was randomized. So they were given the different dosages of the supplement in the beverage mixture, which was originally made up by Perez, Guisado, and Jakeman in their 2010 study. Once they consumed the beverage, they had to wait an hour because again, in the Perez, Guisado, and Jakeman study, they also had that 1 hour waiting period. It was what's known as their loading time. So once that hour was completed, they would complete 4 trials of the 60-yard shuttle run protocol. So they would start at the line where it says 0. Yeah, I would say ready, set, go. And when I said go, the participant would go to the first marker, which was 5 yards away. They would come back, run 10 yards, come back, run 15 yards, and come back. Like I said, there's 4 trials with 30-second breaks in between, and they did it for a total of 4 trials. Once they completed it, I would assess their level of delayed onset muscle soreness on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being there was no soreness whatsoever, and 5 being, they basically, can't move. So I assessed it 24 and 48 hours after the protocol, and then measured their soreness that way. So once all the results were tabulated, it was noted that the delayed onset muscle soreness was significantly higher when you compared the 2-gram treatment versus the 4-gram treatment, and also when you compared the 4-gram treatment versus the 6-gram treatment, which was not really surprising considering, like I said in the past, that the typical supplementation during studies were either 6 or 8 grams. Besides that, all the other treatments were equal with each other, and none of the other variables differed significantly. Although it wasn't the positive significant results that I was looking for, it's still beneficial because it does add to the body of knowledge in regards to this particular supplement and also supplementation in general. So in conclusion, the citrulline malate unfortunately did not enhance the participants' anaerobic capacity. And regardless of the dosage, the participant shuttle run times were not decreased by any way. It did not alleviate delayed onset muscle soreness symptoms or aid in recovery regardless of the dosage. And it did not lessen the severity of the delayed onset muscle soreness. So that leads the absolute need for further research being done with a larger sample size. My sample size was 10 participants altogether, 8 males and 2 females. It was the first study of its kind involving the supplement that did involve females, so that was another highlight of the study. It would also be beneficial if different populations were utilized, different protocols, specifically ones that stress the anaerobic capacity of the participant, and also different dosages as well, because with my study we've increased the spectrum from 2 to 10 grams, so it would be interesting to see maybe the odd number dosages, so 1, 3, 5, 7, all the way up. Who knows? So that's where further research is needed. With that being said, a special thank you to Dr. Ansel, who was a major supporter in the study. He'll tell you firsthand that there was a lot of speed bumps in trying to get this study moving forward, especially with the IRB, in supplementation. Special thank you to Dr. Spactarella for her data analysis, and last but certainly not least, the participants who took part in the study. So, any questions? So either I was really thorough, or I bored you guys to death. Yeah. Yes.
What type of participants do you like? What was their background specifically? Did they have experience in anaerobic activity? Were they familiar with the 60-yard shuttle run?
Great question. The participants were from the general college population. The age range was 21 to, I had a couple external participants as well, so the age range was 21 to 29. For the most part, I wouldn't say that they had a strong affinity for the 60-yard shuttle run. I don't think it was a protocol that they were, acclimated to per se. Did that answer your question?
Well, I'm more so wondering if they had any sort of experience with this, like, soccer players or basketball players generally have to repeat that kind of emotion or action in practice to consider that to be recruit participants.
In regards to picking participants that have,
Yeah, you mentioned different population sizes might affect the results of the research.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, it was very, the study was very difficult to move forward. So gaining participants was it was an arduous task. So getting members from the general population was the best route at that point. Moving forward, into like doctoral programs, it may be easier to, focus on a specific set of population. So, football players, soccer players, basketball players, like you're talking about, ones who are acclimated to that kind of protocol. You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much for your time, guys.
Okay, to Vince, to answer your question a little bit more, Eric didn't talk about it, but the original plan was to use ice hockey participants. And we ran into all kinds of difficulties in getting ice time from various ice arenas. And we had difficulty in getting a grant or getting a ice rink to donate the time. And so we had to switch. So after we had a nice little study plan with ice hockey players, we had to make a switch to the task. Originally we were going to do an ice hockey anaerobic task, and then we switched from there to doing the 60 shuttle. And anyways, it turned out to be a very good study. More research needs to be done in this area. Most likely, if we're not doing it, there's somebody else in the world that's doing work in this area. Nice presentation, Eric. Our next presenter is Pam Kelly, and she's going to make a talk about the study she did in comparison two CrossFit boxes. Okay. Is that Eric's?
No, that's mine.
Okay, good.
Sorry, Kristen. So my name is Pam. My undergrad was in biology, and then I applied to the program and got in. I decided to do my study on CrossFit boxes. There are two boxes that I know the owners of down in Ocean County, and I just wanted to compare them because they are both very, very different. One comes from she's the owner and she's a level 3 coach now. She was a hairdresser to start, and then the other one, he is from Ecuador, and he was a personal trainer, he's a cyclist, and then decided to open a CrossFit box because he was sick of working at the local Retro Fitness as a trainer. So he went into CrossFit, and he has a few different backgrounds. So the purpose of the study was to see if there were the differences between them. I had from CrossFit Lithium, which is the one owned by the hairdresser, I had 11 males and 8 females. And then from CrossFit Razor, there were 12 men and 9 women. So there was a different amount of people from each one. The participants, before their study, they had to do a warm-up. They were also advised to not work out 24 hours before the study happened, only to make sure that they weren't too sore for doing this. We looked at upper body strength, lower body strength, and core strengthening. And when we did the testing, I did a t-test to see if there was any difference between the means, and it came out to be that there was really no difference between them. So a little bit of background about CrossFit. CrossFit is a mix of aerobic exercise, gymnastics, which is more of a body weight kind of exercise, and Olympic lifting. It's a high intensity program most of the time. They're keep going. They don't stop. If they do stop, they take like a 5-second water break, and they just keep moving. Most of the boxes all train with the 10 general physical skills to work their cardiovascular, respiratory, endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, speed, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. So they want all of their athletes to be very competent in these skills. So most boxes, they do all of that. And so far, when I had done my study, there had been no studies looking at comparing different boxes. They mostly just looked at what boxes did. So for this, they were 2 boxes in Central Jersey. The reason to compare the athletes and to see what they were is to look at, for the coach's sake, to see if they are training the right thing for their athletes. Athletes do vary from person to person. As everybody knows, everybody's different. Everybody has a different skill level. So I know at each gym they do offer different levels of classes. For this, I did mine consisting of participants that were not novice athletes. They had to have been at least doing CrossFit for at least a year, if not longer. So for my hypothesis, I hypothesize that there will be no difference between athletes in the boxes for their upper body strength, lower body strength, and core strength. I said this because if they're training at what CrossFit says they should be training, each coach is doing what they say. Yes, they may do different training on different days, but they should be training the same thing, so there should be no difference. So they were, as I said, instructed to not do activity prior. At the testing, the day of, it was one-on-one testing. We met, talked about their age. They did a PAR-Q, a health questionnaire, had to make sure that they were healthy enough to actually be doing the testing, and should they really be doing CrossFit, which everybody that tested came out that they should be doing their activity. So they did the warm-up, which mirrored mostly of what they're doing in CrossFit, and then they did the testing protocol. So the protocol for the upper body strength included pull-ups, push-ups, and bench press. They did their pull-ups as how many pull-ups can be done in 1 minute. Same thing with the push-ups, and bench press was done for their 1 RM max. So they did it a few times and then went at their all max to see what they could do. For the lower body, they did deadlifts and box jumps. It was very interesting to see some of them do box jumps. But it was something that they always do. Some of them do struggle with that. Most people do. And then for the core, they did sit-ups, V-ups, and toes to bar. So all of that was done with how many they can do within 1 minute. For the statistical analysis, you used a t-test to determine if there was a difference in the means between the 2 boxes. And also, I had found normative data on just regular lifts for deadlifts and bench press. So I compared those to see how they compare to CrossFit and just a normal person who does lifting. So that everybody tested in each condition and that there was no significance. So the first slide here is about the different participants at CrossFit Lithium and their means and standard deviation for their body weight exercises. Broken down between men, women, and the group. And then there was also that for the CrossFit Razor. For when you look at the comparison of them, as you see here after doing the testing, that there was not much difference between them, which was a good thing because that's what I hypothesized. The next is about the deadlifts and bench press, and then the box jump for each group. And then for the results here, again, showing that there was not much difference between them. My next is about where they fall in comparison to the average person who lifts. So comparing the men to the women, it showed that against normative data, that most of the males for the deadlift, they came out as advanced, being that they have been practicing doing lifting for over 2.5 years. In the study that was done about the lifting previously, they broke it down to novice was somebody who had never trained, untrained was somebody who had never trained. Novice was that you trained regularly for 3 to 9 months in this specific lifting. And intermediate was regularly for up to 2 years. And advanced was that you had been training for multiple time, and elite is that you are the you compete in this lifting, so you are like an Olympic lifter, and this is about 1% of the population that lifts. So it shows that the men were advanced and women were considered intermediate. And then for the bench press, both men and women were considered intermediate for this as compared to the standard. So this is just showing that doing CrossFit, you probably will be gaining more out of it than just going to the regular gym and doing these lifts. So in my conclusion, it is determined that there was no difference between the boxes, and that since they all train the same, that you should be able to go on vacation, or if you move, you can go in. A lot of the boxes have a one-day visitation that you can come in and pay $15, $20 just to come in for one of their classes, but they want to actually know that you have been doing CrossFit. You can't just show up and be the average Joe and say, oh, I'm going to do CrossFit today. No, you have to go through a training class. I know at both gyms they have a 3 class that you have to do one-on-one with the coach to learn the lifts, to learn different squats, how to do everything properly, because they don't want you to get hurt in their gym, because then it's a lawsuit on them. So they have you learn all of that first, and then after that you can go into their beginner class, and you have to stay in the beginner class for up to 6 months, depending on how you're doing. And then after that you can move up into their more advanced classes. As it was shown for the deadlift, that males were considered advanced and females were intermediate. This may be because males do have more power in Olympic lifting than females. It has been shown in other studies. Some may argue that, and also based on the female body size, females have a smaller build than a male, so they most of the time cannot lift as much as a male can. There were also several factors that limited this. The groups, ages, sometimes the younger the person is, the better they are going to be at doing an activity than an older person. Also, there are different levels that they were actually at. Some of them, they all had to be at least intermediate, but there were some that were more advanced. And also the group size, yes, there were plenty from each, but if there were more people done in a study, it could have gotten more results and different results. For future studies, they could look at the increased sample size, also looking at different boxes in different areas, maybe more rural or more places that are in the city. They may have a different population. And they could also look at different exercises that are done and also different lifts that are done that not everybody is well known in. And also the different age and different population could also look at these. And then for the end of mine, I would just like to again thank Dr. Ansel, Dr. Palgi, Dr. Kim, wherever you are, I know you're out there, and of course my family and everybody in my class and my husband. And that's it.
One of the things that I'd like to bring to mind about presentations is that the presentations are 10 to 15 minutes and it goes by pretty quick. However, it doesn't tell you about the time and effort that every one of these presenters put into their studies. And they were talking about, in some cases, 6 months to a year. That's part of their life for that long a period of time. So, and the other thing is that these studies are unique. Nobody has, in the world, has done exactly the same thing. So it's like being a sculptor. You sculpture, you think about some type of thing you want to sculpture out, you do it. And nobody has the same exact thing. So these studies that are being presented today, as far as we know, when we started and we finished, nobody has done the exact thing. Maybe similar stuff, but nobody has done the exact thing. So think of mine when presenters are presenting, that it just didn't happen 10, 15 minutes. It took a donation of their time for a period of time. Okay, so we have Lauren Kravitz, who's next, and she's looking at the effectiveness of TRX, which some of you do, and comparison between condition and another treatment was traditional and a combination of TRX, and then just plain old resistance training. Lauren?
Hello everyone, my name is Lauren. I'm here to talk to you guys about my research on the effectiveness of TRX, TRT, and combined resistance training for overhead athletes. I just wanted to start off by thanking Dr. Walter Ansel for helping me and taking all of his time and effort to read the numerous amounts of rough drafts that I gave him. I'd also like to thank Dr. Spacca-Rotella for doing the data analysis. Her and I went back and forth a bunch of times. I'd also like to thank my participants. Some of them are actually in the crowd right now, and I appreciate you guys putting up with me because it was not an easy task, so thank you. Just a quick background, I graduated from William Patterson with a Bachelor's of Science in Athletic Training. From there, I came here as a graduate assistant for the Kean University Athletic Training Program, and I'm currently working as an assistant athletic trainer at NJIT. So everyone knows the purpose of weight training is obviously to increase strength. Weight training places a considerable stress on every joint in the body and increases strength of muscles, bones, and surrounding soft tissues. The shoulder joint, however, is more susceptible to muscle imbalances because of the unnatural positions and loads placed on the joint during weight training. Research suggests that neural adaptations by means of improved coordination of the agonist, antagonist, synergist, and stabilizing muscles are main contributors to these strength gains. Traditional resistance training, or TRT, which you'll see a lot of, with dumbbells is proposed to improve these training results by increasing the need of coordination, balance, and control of dumbbells throughout a range of motion by using these synergist, stabilizing, and antagonist muscles. TRT has also been suggested to isolate body parts, muscles, joints, and can be difficult to translate into activities of daily living. And on the other hand, research has also reported dumbbells to be more functional and allow for the greater range of motion. However, these mechanics involved using dumbbells can be problematic. So you can start to see where some of the research is contradictory. Instability training, or the total body resistance exercise, TRX, which is what I used for this study. Functional training allows for the movement of multiple muscle groups and joints, which promotes greater neural adaptations and adaptations to stressors while making it easier to translate into activities of daily living. Different types of functional training include instability training, suspension training, which is also a form of instability training, Olympic lifting, and strongman competition training. Instability training can also include anything with uneven surfaces. So if you're trying to do push-ups, you could also use a medicine ball that's an uneven surface that's considered functional. You can use physio balls, foam pads, BOSU balls, that's all included in there. So this functional training increases upper and lower body strength, agility, shoulder flexibility, and dynamic balance. It's also instability training with low resistance and activation of the core seems to restore normal function and increase strength. And although limited, research suggests that functional training significantly improves lower and upper body strength, cardiorespiratory endurance, agility, dynamic balance, and shoulder flexibility. Some of the exercises that involve strength and stability of the core, such as sling exercises or the TRX, could create more coordinated muscle activation, which creates more force. Now the sling exercises, it's similar to the TRX. It's a suspension type of training. However, there's no handles like the TRX has. There's just kind of like a sling that you put your arms or legs through. And I had to base a lot of my research off of that because there's not a lot of research on the TRX because it's still a relatively new method of training. So I had to use the sling exercises or the rest of the instability training like I mentioned earlier with the BOSU balls, physio balls, and all of that. Combined resistance training, and for this study is the TRXT group. Previous research has added ballistic training to a traditional heavy resistance training program on upper and lower body maximal strength, and they found significant increases in their 1RM or one repetition max squat and bench press for the combined group, indicating that using several resistance training factors is better than just one single resistance training method. And other authors have studied combined resistance training by combining elastic tubing with traditional resistance training and have seen similar results. So what was the purpose of my study? The purpose of my study was to compare the training effects of TRT, the traditional resistance training with dumbbells, TRX, or the TRXT, which is the combined group, regarding strength and throwing distance in the collegiate female athlete. These methods were used to help determine which strengthening protocol, if any, is best for increasing upper body strength and throwing distance, especially for overhead athletes looking for an alternative to traditional weightlifting. So there were a total of 7 hypotheses. The first 6 pretty much just say there was an increase in throwing distance or an increase in strength for each of the groups. And the 7th one says that there will be no difference in strength and throwing distance between the TRX, TRT, and TRXT condition. My participants, I only got about 16 of them. They were aged between 18 and 30 years old. They were recruited from Kean University, and majority of them were from I think all of them actually were from the undergraduate program, and they were actually recruited from the athletic training program. They were also required to complete the informed consent medical history questionnaire and the PAR-Q to determine to make sure that they're safe and healthy enough to participate in my study. Some of the instruments used for the warm-up, they used the upper body ergometer, or the UBE. It was a 10-minute warm-up. The first 5 minutes, they used 50 to 60 RPMs, and then worked their way up between 70 to 90 RPMs. The biodex was also used in the beginning of the study to determine their isokinetic strength, and they were using, or I used the horizontal adduction abduction. In the picture, it's similar. It was in that position. They were holding on to it. However, they were standing. And the angular velocities of 60, 90, and 120 degrees were used. 60 degrees is typically more for actual strength testing, and 90 and 120 degrees, I believe, is used for more of, to determine their power. Throwing distance was also recorded, and they used a lacrosse ball, because Doc and I kind of figured that was the most, I guess, easiest ball to throw with a good weight and easy grip. And then to measure the throwing distance, there was a meter man or a distance measuring wheel to determine that. Bioelectrical impedance analyzer was also used in the beginning and at the end of the study to determine body mass index and body composition, such as body fat, percent body fat, water weight, all of that. And then, of course, the TRX suspension trainer was used. So the warm-up, like I said before, was on the UBE. It was 10 minutes. First 5 minutes was the 50 to 60 RPMs, and they worked their way up to 70 to 90 RPMs. And the reasoning for this was because previous research has said that the faster you crank, or the more RPMs, it increases your oxygen intake, therefore increasing your heart rates. And so to determine whether this was true or not, or if it was consistent, we recorded the resting heart rate before the warm-up and also after the warm-up. Some of the methods, they were asked to abstain from upper and lower body strengthening activities for the duration of the intervention to determine what truly was causing an increase in strength. Before the first testing session, participants' age, height, weight, BMI, and body composition were recorded. And then again, they performed the strength testing on the isokinetic biodex system before to assess upper body strength. And whoever was placed in the traditional group or the combination group performed 1 repetition max testing for each of their exercises with the dumbbell. So these are the protocols. There was a total of 4 groups. I didn't list the control group because they weren't doing anything. But the TRX group, they performed 5 exercises: chest press, bicep curls, mid-row, the Y deltoid fly, and triceps press. And you could see the muscles that I tried to target. And these were performed for 1 set of 15 repetitions. The traditional protocol was also performed for one set at 15 repetitions, but it was performed at 70% of their one repetition max. So the supine chest press, bicep curls, triceps extensions, bent over fly, and bent over row. So what I tried to do was try to mimic the same muscle groups between the TRX and the traditional protocol. And the TRXT, or the combination protocol, was a combination of the TRX and traditional. So we combined we used 3 traditional exercises and then 3 TRX exercises for a total of 6. And these were also performed for one set of 15. And the traditional ones were performed at 70% of their one repetition max. Statistical analysis of randomized ANOVA design was used to determine any differences or significance between the strengthening protocols as well as the exercises. And the significance level was 0.05 to determine the significance. And SPSS was used. This is just a quick table of the physical characteristics of each treatment. It was interesting because the first 3 groups, they actually increased all of their BMI and their fat mass. Just so everyone knows, the BL is baseline and post is post-testing. And the control group was actually the only group that either stayed the same or lost weight, which was interesting. And here in the yellow, it's telling us that there was a change in the peak torque for 60 degrees for the right arm coming towards the body, or adduction. There was a change in the variable from baseline to post-test. However, the between subjects effects are not significant based on the significance level of 0.05. And basically, it's just saying that all the groups changed over time. However, one group did not do better than the other. So there was no real significant findings. However, there was a good trend towards significance. And maybe if given a larger sample, there would have been more significance found. So again, the purpose of this study was just to determine which of the 3 strengthening protocols, if any, produced the greatest throwing distance and isokinetic measurement on the biodex at each of the 3 designated angular velocities, again, 60, 90, and 120 degrees. And this study also aimed to examine which treatments increased their one repetition max bench press, as well as which treatment between the traditional and the combined group increased their one repetition max for each of their respective exercises. The present study had an average resting heart rate of 76 beats per minute and the average heart rate of 107 beats per minute after the warm-up. So these findings were consistent with previous research regarding higher crank rates and higher heart rates. Some of the limitations or some factors that could have affected the results, all 16 females did have varying fitness levels, and the exact start and end range of motion was determined by each participant's comfort level. So they all did the same motion. They were holding onto the dynamometer and coming like this, but their starting position, some may have started here, some may have started back here. That was all based on their comfort level, but they still all did the same motions. But that starting position may have affected the results a little bit. And again, the participants weren't allowed to do upper body or lower body lifting. So if someone was used to working out 3, 4, 5 days a week, they weren't allowed to do any upper body lifting or lower body lifting with me. So it's possible that they may have lost strength. That was also a big factor in the results, or affecting the results. Future studies, I think it would be good to mimic my study, but allowing them to perform the upper and lower body lifting. Of course, maybe given some parameters, so we need to determine what's causing their increase in strength. Is it them working out, or is it the study that's causing them to increase their strength? Examine the effects of TRX, TRT, and the combined strengthening protocols with a larger sample size. And you could also use a different combination of instability training techniques, like I mentioned earlier. So using a BOSU ball, foam pads, or physio balls in conjunction with the strengthening techniques, which were not included in this study. That's it.
Okay, you could take a nice deep breath, and we're going to move on a little bit. Today I did give Lauren the word that she is basically done with writing in her thesis. And it's just a matter of putting it together for publication and so forth. So congratulate Lauren. You can see this particular study, Lauren's an athletic trainer and so forth, and she's going to be a combination athletic trainer, exercise science, and her study crosses over the rehabilitation world and the exercise physiology world, and it was a nice combination. And we looked at common modalities of exercise that are being used in rehabilitation and also in training. And sometimes the practitioners tell you this is good, this is better than this, and this is better than that. And the only way to really get the answer is to do systematic controlled research. And if you notice, if you haven't noticed, that all our projects are dealing with recent topics of the day, and trying to get the answers. And you can see that we're not always getting the answer, but we're trying to get the quest for the answer of particular questions. And so, again, this is a very thorough, good study. Our next presenter is Alicia Ott, or as we call her, AJ. She's finished with her program in January, I believe, right? This year. And she is a physical education teacher in Bergen County, right? And she wanted to look at the effect of yoga on stress in female high school students. And she does teach there, and we're trying to get her as an adjunct teacher here to teach yoga for us. Okay? So, AJ?
Space for this? I don't know, can you hear this? Can everybody hear the music? Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is not worry about what's on the slide. Sit tall, no slouching. The reason why I tell you to sit tall is not because I'm a phys ed teacher, it's because it's going to help you breathe a little deeper. So now the hardest part I'm going to ask you to do is close your eyes. Close your eyes, relax all the muscles in your face, unclench your jaw, and now take a nice deep breath in, taking in as much as you possibly can, filling all the way up. Slowly exhale, emptying all the way out, feeling your belly pull in towards your spine as you empty completely. And when you can't empty anymore, take another nice deep breath in. Crown of your head is reaching up as your tailbone is reaching down. You're letting everything go. No worries, no stress. Not worrying about class, assignments, extra credit, all the things you need to do. You're just taking those nice, deep, relaxing breaths. Feeling your chest rise up, feeling your belly sink in. Take another nice, deep breath in. And now exhale and open your eyes. That was mostly for me to get me to relax up here, but anyway, thanks for amusing me. That's how I start my classes. I started bringing yoga to the high school I teach at. And it's hard. The hardest thing is closing the eyes. especially for teenagers. But I hope that showed you a little bit of how it can affect you and relax you and slow your heart rate down and deal with some stress in your life. So without further ado, I want to thank Dr. Spaccaratella for helping me make sense out of the statistics, and a big thank you to Dr. Anzel, because I've been at this quite some time. I had some setbacks, and it's a big deal for me to be here right now. So thank you. My study was on yoga and its effect on stress in the female high school student. Since I am in a high school, I see that, and you guys should know that you go through a lot of stress now. I'm glad I'm not a high school student, between the tests and the new PARCC tests that are coming out and everything you have to pass. And I can't believe how many different colleges you students have to apply to. It's nerve-wracking, and I see it every day. And I wanted to find a way to relieve stress. I've been doing yoga since early 2000, and it's helped me through difficult times in my life. So I thought that it would be a great thing to bring to the high school, and actually doing a study on it and seeing what happens was a big deal for me. And it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to, and I'll explain, but it had some real benefits in the long term as well. Let's see. Oh, so there's your stress. What are you guys stressing about? We're stressing about academics, your life in the home, what's going on in the family, your relationships with your friends. Obviously, parents put a lot of pressure on you. Then there's always that money, and that'll never go away, so you need to try some yoga to help deal with that. Big thing in high school, your physical appearance. School in general. School is one of the biggest stressors for students. And also the reason why I chose females is because they demonstrate stress a lot more than males. I'm not saying that men aren't stressing, just females demonstrate it more. And then the latest craze, cyberbullying, okay? That's a big stressor that follows you everywhere you go if you are being bullied, because it's no longer being bullied in the school anymore. When you go home, there's a safe place to go to. It's on your cell phones, it's on your computers, everywhere you go. So it's important to find some healthy way to deal with all these stressors. And we all know there's a lot of terrible side effects of stress, and having to go to school every day, this makes it a lot harder. You can have something as simple as headaches all the way through to thoughts of suicide, as well as your behavioral problems in school or at home. It manifests itself in many different ways. So in general, students need to find a way to beat their stress. And I was really passionate about this because I do see it every day. Okay, so for my intervention, I had two groups. I had a yoga group, and then I had the control group. The yoga group met twice a week. Unfortunately, the amount of time that I had to teach the class ended up being about 30 minutes. And then the control group just continued with their regular physical education class. So we met twice a week for 8 weeks. 8 weeks being that a marking period is between 8 and 9 weeks long, so in order to get the study in, I did it in 8 weeks. We took measurements at the beginning, halfway through, and at the end, after the 8 weeks of yoga. So just to give you a little familiarization of what yoga is, yoga essentially means to join. And what we're joining here is the physical body and the mind. And how we do that is by practicing asanas, and an asana is a pose or a posture, along with what they call pranayama, which is what you were doing in the beginning, is deep breathing, okay? And the reason why I made you sit up is because you can't take the deep breath if you're slouched over, okay? And it's essentially, yoga is supposed to bring, to restore simplicity and peace in your mind. And that is from B.K.S. Iyengar. This is a book that, an author that I refer to a lot, who's a big guru in yoga, and I teach yoga in school and outside of school, so I refer to his books a lot. It's been really helpful. Okay, so the measurements I started out with, I did a body mass index. We used a sit and reach box for hamstring flexibility, And finally, I used a perceived stress scale. It's Cohen's perceived stress scale. It's a Likert scale, very simple, easy to understand, easy for the kids to read, and they can answer it quickly just by circling the number. So it's not a tedious project for them to do, because I don't want to stress them out anymore. All right? Okay, so my results. Basically, in the end, the results said that both groups improved in all 3 areas. That I did not expect. The regular phys ed also improved in flexibility. I would have thought that the yoga group would have improved a little bit more, and I would have thought that the yoga group would have demonstrated more of a reduction in stress. But everybody's different in physical education, and it's a stress reliever. And that marking period that I did it in was actually the most fun marking period for phys ed, because I don't know if you guys are familiar with pickleball. We do pickleball, and the kids love pickleball. We also do ultimate frisbee, which is a very competitive, fun sport to play outside. And then finally, if the kids don't want to do that, they get to power walk on the track on a beautiful day. So I could see that that would reduce their stress as well. Okay, why is it important? It implies that yoga is just as effective as regular physical education class, so it is a viable change up in physical education curriculum that you could use, and also you can implement it easily. So my study demonstrated that in a regular physical education curriculum, you can implement a yoga class, and not a lot of equipment. Either you can use a video if you don't have a yoga instructor. Luckily, I'm a phys ed teacher and yoga instructor. And also, students in the long run may reap additional benefits rather than the ones that I was measuring. Yoga has been known to have many different benefits, especially for the kids. Self-esteem gets improved, self-confidence, even their posture improves. Not only dealing with stress and increasing strength and endurance in their body. So over time, if they do decide that yoga might be a choice for them, they can do this from now until they're 80 years old and still reap all these benefits. People have gotten into yoga later in life because of these benefits, and it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. Why? Because it works. Future research should continue in this area due to all these possible benefits that students can receive. If I were to change anything, I would do a larger population. I had 40 in the yoga group and 29 females in the control group. I would have loved to do more. I also would have loved it for an extended period of time. So if some high schools might have block scheduling, it would work better, or maybe an after-school program where they can take yoga after school, but then again, that's adding something else to their list of things to do and stress you out a little bit more. So that's not the goal. So I don't know what the answer is, but yoga is a viable exercise to implement. And even in the classroom, you could do it. I have teachers that just do those little breathing exercises for students, and it changes how they interact in the class. So if you learn nothing from tonight, try to do a little breathing exercise when you stress out, and it will help you out. Any questions? No? Okay.
Feel better? Okay, for some of the people that are in fitness and wellness program, Global Fitness and Wellness, this is one example why we have you take yoga as part of the curriculum. Some excellent benefits if it's done by professionals. We're going to move on and try to finish our program up with continuing on. We have our next speaker, who is Kristen O'Neill, and she was looking at the acute effects of sports drinks on hydration. Okay, so Kristen. Black ones?
Yes.
Brown ones?
That's it.
Yeah, okay.
All right, hi everyone, my name's Kristen and my thesis was the acute effects of sports drinks on rehydration. There are numerous sports drinks out there available for people to pick up and consume after exercise, and it's really important that people do this to replenish the nutrients that they lost throughout the exercise and avoid becoming dehydrated. Once you become dehydrated, you can have a decrease in performance and impaired cognitive function and symptoms of fatigue, and no one really wants that. So there's tons of research on these beverages, especially the popular beverages such as Gatorade, water, and chocolate milk. And many of the research involves athletes or sports teams and also exercise that lasts longer than an hour. And through this research, it has been indicated that a carbohydrate electrolyte beverage is the most effective in post-exercise recovery when the exercise lasts an hour or more. But what about an inactive population whose endurance can't last an hour, but maybe a half an hour? And what about coconut water? Coconut water has the same makeup as some of these beverages, yet it's rarely studied. So that's what led me to my question. What is a better hydration beverage for an inactive population exercising for at least 30 minutes? The participants were recruited from Mercer County, New Jersey. There's 5 males and 11 females, totaling 16. They were between the ages of 20 and 35, and they were inactive. They were all pre-screened prior to beginning the program by filling out the Part Q and the medical history questionnaire. We were also given consent by the form that they filled out, and some of the materials that I used are on this sheet, and prior to the test, physiological and physical characteristics were measured, such as BMI, body fat, heart rate, blood pressure, and I think I said body fat. So the procedure was 1 session a week for 4 weeks. Each session lasted approximately an hour and a half, and before each session, the participants' weight was measured. Then they warmed up for 5 minutes and proceeded to exercise for an additional 20 minutes at a moderate intensity. After that, they cooled down for an additional 5 minutes, and then they were weighed again to determine the body weight that they lost throughout this exercise program. Previous research has indicated that beverage consumption of 1.5 liters per kilogram body weight loss is the optimum fluid amount to replenish after exercise. So this was used to calculate the amount of beverage each participant had to consume after the procedure. They then sat in a climate-controlled room for approximately an hour later, after, and then when they had to go to the bathroom, the urine sample was collected and then analyzed using specific gravity urinalysis sticks. So my results are actually being analyzed right now, so there's nothing really to report there. However, future research can look at this same population for a longer duration. This particular study was 30 minutes, and each participant lost around 5 pounds. For dehydration, you typically need to lose 1 to 2.5 pounds, so a longer duration in a study might induce a greater state of dehydration and have different results than this study. Also looking at a higher intensity, this particular study was moderate and also interval exercise. This was 30 minutes of continuous exercise, so interval exercise program might have different results in this study. And that is my references.
Good job, Kristen. As you can see, she's in the process of analyzing her data and working on her last 2 chapters in her thesis. But again, it's an interesting topic about recovery and recovery drink supplementation after exercise. It's a very popular exercise, science discussion area, and a lot of research has to be done in that area. Our next speaker is Jamie Levine, and he is going to look at or present his paper on the effects of high repetition eccentric hamstring training in collegiate athletes. Okay, Jamie?
Hello, my name is Jamie. I know a lot of faces in here, so it's nice to see you. Thanks for coming. I'm an athletic trainer here. I went to school here. Kean boy, I've been here for 8 years, if not longer. So this kind of all started for me back when I was in my undergraduate degree, because I studied athletic training here. And I really wanted to take a look at eccentric hamstring exercises, because when I was a student, I worked with football, and I saw all these kids getting hamstring strains, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was thinking, as an athletic trainer, is there something we can do to kind of help make this, go away, this epidemic? And now, hamstring strains, they're very common. You see it all the time. But what are they doing beforehand? What are they doing, in their off season for athletes? What are they doing before the season? And is there anything we can do in season, saying that there is an injury that occurs? Is there anything we can do to a smaller degree to kind of help them along their way? But first and foremost, I want to thank everybody that's been a part of this journey. I graduated from Kean in 2012. It's 2016 now, and I just finished. So I really appreciate the time spent, the people that supported me, Doc Inzel, Dr. Palgi, Dr. Spacratella for her help, Dr. Messler and Torme, and Dr. Marshall in the backs, in addition to all my athletic training students, my classmates, all my friends and family. Thanks for all the support, because it's been one journey for me. So I want to start it off. I know we're all here. We all know a little bit about the body, but the hamstring muscle group, the biceps femoris, is the most vulnerable to injury due to the greatest active lengthening during the late swing of running phase. So we know the hamstring is a biarticulate muscle, crosses over the hip and it crosses the knee. So eccentric lengthening occurs pretty much with every step we take. The lower leg swings forward during the late swing phase of running, and as the hip flexes, the knee extends simultaneously. The hamstring muscle group is used primarily to decelerate the forward movement of the lower extremity with eccentric contractions. Eccentric contractions, flexibility, and strength are believed to be integral components of hamstring injuries. So, like I was saying earlier, is eccentric training something that we can incorporate, into a workout plan prior to the season starting? Because we've seen that once those hamstring injuries happen, it's pretty much, they're going to linger on for the rest of the season. It's because they're still highly functional. You consider them day to day. We all know with our fantasy sports, what does that mean? But it's something that they can participate with, but maybe to a lesser extent. So can we really eccentrically train that muscle while we're in that process? It's been shown that the incorporation of eccentric strengthening programs can help prevent hamstring strains in susceptible athletes. Again, bearing that we do that prior to participation. Eccentric exercises have been traditionally used at a smaller repetition range, between 3 to 10 repetitions, due to muscle soreness and difficulty. So we say, we go to the weight room, there's not a whole lot we can do. There's the availability of machines, let's say, to do eccentric exercises, there's not a ton. They're specifically made and usually used for studying purposes, not something that you'd see at Retro Fitness or Gold's. But what we can do is, the Nordic hamstring lowering, you have a partner hold on to their ankles, as the muscle elongates, lower yourself to the ground and kind of explode yourself up. But if any of us have tried that in this room, that's easier said than done sometimes, because you realize how heavy you are as you're trying to prevent yourself from falling to the ground. So it is tough because muscle soreness occurs pretty rapidly. Deficits in strength and pain intolerance after injury may make incorporation of eccentric exercises difficult, but the use of proper equipment can make eccentric strengthening more practical. So some of the questions that I thought prior to coming to doc with my question was, can eccentric exercises be implemented into a rehab protocol? Now, I said I'm an athletic trainer, so sometimes that kid doesn't want to work out with me over summer. He said, I'm fine, I'll do my own stuff with my coaches. Preseason come, boom, he's got a hamstring strain, and now he wants me to get him back onto the field. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but maybe I can incorporate a different type of protocol that we can still do eccentric exercises, maybe not to the same extent or the same intensity. And can those eccentric exercises be beneficial pre-injury or post-injury? So it's a mouthful, but my statement of the problem is the purpose of the study was to compare the acute effects of low repetition, high intensity eccentric exercises to the acute effects of high repetition, low intensity eccentric exercises using a Biodex isokinetic dynamometer and determining if a high repetition, lower intensity can elicit similar responses to what we consider traditional eccentric exercises. And some of the parameters I was looking at were hamstring to quadricep strength ratios, peak hamstring muscle torque, flexibility, and a reduction in DOMS perception. So my hypotheses, there will be a reduction in delayed onset muscle soreness. For the high repetition group, there'd be an increase in delayed onset muscle soreness for the low repetition group. There would be changes in flexibility, peak torque, following high repetitions. The HRE, I abbreviated LRE, the low repetition, and HRE for the high repetition. And there will be an improved in both conventional and functional forms of hamstring and quadricep strength ratios following both. Conventional and functional quadricep hamstring ratios is pretty much, we'll take the concentric quad extension versus the concentric hamstring flexion. That's what's considered your conventional ratio, versus the functional will be taking the ratio of the concentric quad contraction and the eccentric lengthening of the hamstring. So looking at those two measures. My methods, I had 28 participants, male and female between the ages of 18 and 28. They were all recruited here from Kean, had informed consent. They had a PAR-Q and medical history questionnaire all filled out. Instrumentation, this is an example of the Biodex. I know Lauren's presentation was on the same machine, hers being for shoulder, mine being for the lower extremity. All it is a change in parameters and attachments. And I also use Star Trek Pro bicycle ergonometer for warm-up. I use the Biodex system for my pre-test, my post-test, and the intervention. If anyone, I know some of you guys have been on the Biodex in here. I see some participants in my study. But also, if you haven't, it's an isokinetic machine. So the resistance is not changed by pounds; it's by degree changes. So for an example, if I'm looking for a more intense exercise, I'm going to shorten the degree change. If I can move 60 degrees in 1 second, that's really slow. That takes a long time. Versus moving 300 degrees in that same 1 second, which would be faster, thus lowering the intensity. So I use this for my pre-test strength measures, post-test measures, and I use it as my exercise protocol. It was a 7-week program. Week 1 was my setup and familiarity with the machine as well as a pre-test. Weeks 2 through 6 were my intervention, and week 7 was my post-testing. So the hard thing with Biodex is it's a little intimidating. If you look at that, you're kind of strapped into you got a bunch of cables and ropes around you, your legs strapped into the machine. Sometimes these kids are like, I have no idea what I just got myself into. But it's to pretty much eliminate any forward movement, any compensation from the joint that you're looking. So to get familiar with this machine, especially because many of us don't really do eccentric strengthening in the weight room, at home, it's tough and it's difficult to do. So having one trial session, I don't think was enough, but that's what the time allowed for. So that first week was used for setup, get them familiar with the machine, and pre-test strengthening. I measured height and weight to assess the BMI. We used goniometric measurements of passive hip flexion for hamstring range of motion. And like I said, the introductory session on the Biodex. What we did was isokinetic strength testing. So I did 8 concentric contractions at 3 different speeds. So 240 degrees per second, which is pretty fast, 180 degrees, which is more of a standard speed, and 60 degrees in 1 second, which is a lot slower, more intense, with a minute rest in between. And on the other side, we did eccentric contractions ramping up at the same speed. I did that so I had the same amount of contractions, so I can at least have similarities when I created those ratios. Week 2 through 6, I had 3 intervention groups. We had a control. We had the one group, which would be the low repetition. So what they accomplished was 3 sets of 5 repetitions at 60 degrees per second. And the second group, which is the high repetition, had 25 repetitions for 3 sets at 240 degrees per second. They all performed standardized bike warm-ups in our Kean athletic training room. After exercise, I had them fill out a rate of perceived exertion Borg scale from 6 to 20 immediately after exercise to see how difficult it was for them, and we followed up 2 days post to see their DOMS perception. After exercise, we had them do 5 sets of 20 seconds hamstring and quadricep stretching. Week 7, was post-test height, weight, and BMI measurements again. Same thing, goniometric measurements, and I did the same isokinetic testing to again assess the functional and conventional hamstring to quadricep ratios. Analysis, we did repeated measures ANOVA using to determine differences between exercise protocol for peak torque, those hamstring quadricep ratios, and flexibility. I put 3 of what I consider the most important charts on here. This one here is the data for the eccentric hamstring peak torque. So group 1 being the low repetition, so we had their left and right leg, because we did both for all participants. Group 2, which would be the higher, and group 3, which would be the control. So when you're looking at the post-test, regardless if they did the high repetition or the low repetition, their increase was similar. The groups started at different spots, but they both increased to over 100 foot-pounds at 60 degrees per second, which is a good increase compared to the control group. This was a measurement of the DOMS initial versus 2 days post, but for the last week. So I measured it that final week to see their DOMS perception. And if you look, initially they were measuring 6.5, and after 2 days it was a 0, pretty much a 6. So after 7 weeks, their initial ratings were over 11, 12, 13, 14. And after 7 weeks of using this machine, after that first day, their DOMS measure and their intensity measurements were almost nothing. The functional hamstring ratios, that was the one I was caring a little bit more about because it was measuring the eccentric contractions. If you look, they went from pre-test from 0.579. A little background of it, there's been research that shows that the minimum that we'd like is to at least have a 50% hamstring strength to quadricep strength. That's pretty much our minimum standard. So we'd like it to be, especially for athletic competition, to be closer to 70, 80%. So if you're looking at the post-test numbers, 7 weeks of these eccentric exercises once a week got us closest 70% in that low repetition group. In addition to, if you look at the second group, their numbers are still pretty elevated as well. So overall, both intervention groups had an increase in that functional ratio. There was no statistical differences regarding DOMS peak torque increase of those ratios. Although changes were not statistically significant, strength ratios, peak torque, and reduction in DOMs were all observed. Future studies and continued research could be done to put an additional emphasis on strengthening the quads at the same time, because in my study we did no concentric quad strengthening, to provide balance on one end of the strength ratio and allow for more telling increase in hamstring to quadricep ratios. So I felt like it was a pretty good study. There's some things I wish I could have done, or now I have some fuel for maybe some further research. But my rationale for doing this was, though, even though that high repetition group wasn't nearly as good as the low repetition is the standard. In my perspective, if I can get that athlete who has a grade 1 hamstring strain to do that higher repetition exercise, well, that's kind of the whole point of my study, was to see if I can implement that into a rehab protocol and it still be beneficial for that athlete. So even though my stats may have not been statistically significant changes, at least in my perspective, I can see now that I could probably incorporate this into an exercise protocol in season rather than having to kind of just sit the kid all year. So even though there wasn't huge changes, there's definitely more fuel for some future studies. And there's my references. Thanks.
Thanks, Doc. Good job. Thank you. Okay. I know we've all been waiting for Colin, and we appreciate him waiting to make this presentation tonight. But he is going to look at the comparison of SMR pressure on range of motion and lower body power. Colin?
What's going on, guys? All right, so I did my study on the comparison of self-myofascial release pressure on range of motion and lower body power. So self-myofascial release is basically, myofascial release is massage. So self-myofascial release is massage that you do on yourself. And there's multiple tools. The most common ones that are used are foam rollers that you see around, or there's hand rollers as well. So background. So self-myofascial release, one of the upsides to it is that it increases range of motion. So when we look at increasing range of motion, flexibility is one of the 5 components of health and fitness. There are multiple types of stretching, whether it's dynamic, static, ballistic, PNF are some of the most common ones. While all types of stretching will increase your range of motion, only dynamic stretching is shown to not limit lower body power. So if you're going out to do some sort of athletic performance and you're doing anything other than dynamic stretching, you will have a decrease in performance most likely from that stretching if you're doing it right before you're going out. So the days of static stretching before you go for a run are behind us, according to science. While stretching will increase your range of motion, it doesn't take into account any sort of myofascial adhesions that you may have. So if you think of your muscles like a rubber band, myofascial adhesion is like the knots that you feel. So take a rubber band, tie a knot in it, and if you stretch on those myofascial adhesions, you're basically tightening that knot. You're stretching out both ends of the muscle and you're not putting any attention to the middle, so that can cause lots of decreases in performance. So myofascial release will break down those knots in that muscle, allowing you to get higher performance out of your muscle in theory. Self-myofascial release is becoming extremely popular because while massage is great, it's very expensive and it's very time consuming. If you have 40 athletes, you can't have 40 people getting a massage from the same person at the same time. But if you buy a foam roller, you can have all the athletes using the foam roller at the same time. That's why the foam roller is becoming so popular. Research suggests that both high pressure and low pressure foam rollers can increase range of motion without affecting performance, but no research has been done comparing the two different foam rollers. So you have all types of foam rollers, some are softer, some are harder. So basically, in theory, the harder foam roller will get to the deeper levels of the muscle, and that will increase your range of motion, but that hasn't been tested yet. So the purpose of this study was to compare the effectiveness of two foam rollers. So we have our high pressure foam roller, which is the multi-level rigid roller, which is basically a PVC pipe covered in a neoprene sleeve. And then the other one is the common one that you see, the black foam roller, is the biofoam roller, which symbolizes the low pressure. So we were looking at the ability to change both range of motion of the quadriceps muscle and lower body power, which was measured by the vertical jump test after a single bout of SMR. So the participants were 29 men, all members of the lacrosse team here at Kean. The participants were randomized into one of three groups: the control group, the high pressure group, and the low pressure group. All participants first completed baseline testing where we went over the protocol. They practiced foam rolling. They were then randomized into their intervention group. So they did not know going in if they were going to foam roll with one foam roller or not, or the control group just sat there quietly and didn't foam roll at all. So after the warm-up and intervention were concluded, the participant laid on a table supine, so with their face down, and we manually pushed their quad into as far a flexion as we could get, or extension as we could get to measure that range of motion. After that, they did the vertical jump test to measure their height of the vertical jump, which symbolized their lower body power. We used a MANOVA for statistical analysis to determine any difference in vertical jump between the three protocols or range of motion between the same three protocols and the baseline. So this was our results. As you can see, there isn't too much of a difference here, and we'll go over these in the next slide here. So there were no significant post-test differences in either range of motion or quadriceps between the three treatments: the high pressure multi-level rigid roller, the biofoam roller, which was low pressure, and the control where they sat and did nothing. The use of self-myofascial release, regardless of the pressure, to increase quadriceps motion and power would not cause a significant change. So basically what this study showed is it doesn't matter if you foam roll, you don't foam roll. This study itself showed that there would be no increase in power or range of motion. So while there was no significant data, I think that this study might have just have been a study where the results just weren't what we expected. While it didn't show any increase, it also didn't show any decrease in power. So this study shows that foam rolling is still something that you should do before, because you will have no decrease in performance. And while you won't have the increases in range of motion, you will still break down those adhesions, which increase localized blood flow to the muscle group or groups of muscle, breaking up of scar tissue, breaking up of muscular adhesions, spasms, and any other trigger points that cause pain within the muscle, which could lead to limited performance. So while we didn't see an increase in performance here, down the line, doing this will probably, in theory, increase performance because you are breaking down that muscle and making it better for performance. And that is what we got.
Okay, this is a hot topic in exercise science, foam rolling. It's something that future studies, we do have some 2 or 3 projects coming up in this year that are dealing with foam rolling, and there's all kinds of things out there about foam rolling, and Collins was one of our second or third attempts to try to broaden and be more specific about the knowledge in foam rolling. Okay. This is the time where I have to thank some people about the program, because I can't do this program by myself. I've had help. First of all, I want to thank the participants tonight. It's been a pleasure working with everybody over the last couple, 3 years. We hate to see you go, but that's how it is in life. You know, I've read, I guess, all of these studies and worked with these individuals with their particular studies, and if you read something, you learn something. And I've learned a lot and kept myself updated by reading theses over the last few years. So they're the people who made this program. So let's give them a round of applause. Okay. Secondly, I want to thank Dr. Pelge, Dr. Adams and Dr. Beck for being here today and supporting the program. We can't do what we do without their support. I want to thank our graduate assistant in exercise science, Victoria Baxter. Let's give her a round of applause. She's done a fantastic job over the last 2 years for us, and we will miss her after this year. And I want to thank the OCIS, is that Asia, she's still here, and her crew for videotaping this program. And this program, I believe, will eventually be put on YouTube, and you can, people who present it, you can see yourself over and over again, or you can see who is in the audience, you know, like Matt Cumber, and all these famous people, and so forth. It's been a fun night. This has been our fastest presentation of studies. Some of you have been here for 2 or 3 years in the graduate program. Sometimes we had marathons, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, or so forth, so forth. The main thing, I hope that people who attended, this helped them in reference to increasing their body of knowledge about exercise science. It's as Mark said, it's an ever-growing, ever-learning process. I've been in this field for a while, and I learn something new every day about exercise in the body. So it never stops. In this field, if you're in this field, you're in to learn about your body, and basically to about the end of your life. So hopefully you gain something. Hopefully we got you thinking about doing graduate work, hopefully here at Kean University, if not someplace else. As you can see, we have some very bright, intelligent, scholarly individuals in our program, and we're very proud of those individuals. You can see that some of our graduates have come back. We have a great group of people that we communicate. We try to keep in track with what they're doing out in the field, and these people are going to, and they are contributing to the body of knowledge out there in exercise science. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and thanks for staying.